go straight as it is. పోతే ప్రాబ్లం లేదు దానికి. There's nothing wrong here. So ఇక్కడికి వెళ్ళిన డేటా అయితే మనకు వస్తుంది. So if something is wrong then it's looking for the checksum, it gives the value అనమాట. When it's looking for the checksum, it normally takes all the data and does this checksum. So if it's the old one, it's a traditional. I'm saving this here. And if I'm clicking
kept him in the palace. He gave him the best education, fine clothes, and anything he could desire. The palace full of beautiful gardens, servants, and entertainers, and Siddhartha grew up enjoying all of this. No pain, no suffering, no hardship. His father believed that if Siddhartha was never exposed to the outside world, he would never experience the harsh realities of life and would choose to be a king. As Siddhartha grew older, his beauty and charm became well known, and many people admired him. He had everything a person could want: wealth, comfort, friends, and a loving family. However, there was always a feeling inside him that something was missing. One day, Siddhartha was curious. He asked his father if he could go outside the palace walls. His father was reluctant, but finally agreed, thinking that seeing the outside world would show Siddhartha how lucky he was to live in the palace. So Siddhartha set out on his journey, excited to see what was beyond the palace gates. But what he saw that day would change his life forever. As he rode through the streets of the city, he saw things he had never seen before. The first thing he noticed was an old man, walking slowly, with a tired face and wrinkled skin. Siddhartha was shocked. He had never seen someone so old before. He asked his charioteer, "What is this?" The charioteer replied, "This is what happens to all of us. We grow old and weak." Siddhartha was confused. He had never thought about growing old. He always thought that life was perfect, that everyone lived happily forever. As they continued their journey, they saw something else that troubled Siddhartha: a sick man lying by the road, suffering in pain. Siddhartha asked, "What is wrong with him?" The charioteer explained, "This is disease, and it can affect anyone, no matter how rich or poor." Siddhartha's heart was heavy. He began to realize that the world was not as perfect as he had thought. People grow old, people get sick, and people die. His perfect life inside the palace. And that was when Siddhartha made a life-changing decision. He would leave the palace, leave his family, and set out on a journey to find the truth of life, to understand why people suffer and how they could find peace. Part 2. Siddhartha's Search for Truth. After Siddhartha's eye-opening, he could not go back to his life of luxury. The palace, his father's kingdom, the comfort, and everything he had ever known seemed pointless now. He realized that life was much more than just pleasure, and he had to find the truth that could help him overcome suffering. The pain of seeing old age, sickness, and death in the world had awakened something deep inside him. Siddhartha felt like he had discovered the answers to these questions about life. He had everything: wealth, family, love. But it wasn't enough. True happiness, he believed, was hidden somewhere beyond the walls of the palace. But there was another thing that weighed on his heart. Siddhartha was married to a beautiful woman named Yasodhara, and they had a young son together named Rahula. Siddhartha loved his family deeply. Yasodhara was not only his wife, but also his best friend, and they shared many special moments. But as much as Siddhartha loved them, he could not ignore the truth he had seen in the outside world. He couldn't ignore the fact that people suffered. He couldn't ignore the truth of old age and death. He needed to find peace, and he believed the only way to do so was to leave everything behind and seek answers. One night, while his wife and son were sleeping peacefully, Siddhartha made a difficult decision. He had already made up his mind, but it was still hard. Leaving his family was the greatest sacrifice he could make, but it was the only way to find the answers he sought. Siddhartha quietly left the palace, not wanting to wake his wife or son. He didn't want them to stop him, to hold him back. He knew that they loved him, but he also knew that he had to follow his own path to find the truth. As he walked out of the palace gates, a deep sadness filled his heart. He looked back one last time at the life he was leaving behind, but there was no turning back now. The moment he stepped outside the gates, he became a renunciant, someone who had given up everything in search of higher truth. Buddha left his palace at the age of 29. Siddhartha traveled for many days and nights, with nothing but the clothes on his back. He found himself in a forest where he met many holy men, known as ascetics, who had also left the material world to search for enlightenment. These ascetics believed that the only way to find truth was through self-denial and suffering. They would fast for long periods, live in discomfort, and meditate for hours without moving. They believed that by suffering, they would purify themselves and come closer to spiritual enlightenment. Siddhartha joined them and began following their practices. For years, he lived in the harshest conditions, meditating for hours on end, not eating enough, and pushing his body to the limit. He believed that by denying his body's needs, he could find the ultimate truth. But after a long time of struggling, he realized something important. Self-denial was not the answer. He was becoming weaker and weaker. His body was so thin that he could barely stand. Yet his mind was still not at peace. He had learned that extreme suffering didn't lead to enlightenment. It only led to pain and exhaustion. One day, Siddhartha collapsed from hunger and weakness. A woman named Sujata found him lying near a river. She gave him some milk rice, and Siddhartha drank it with gratitude. The milk rice nourished him, and he realized that balance was the key to finding peace. Extreme fasting and self-denial were not the answers. Instead, he needed to take care of his body and mind in a balanced way. So Siddhartha decided to take a new approach to his search. He understood that peace and enlightenment didn't come from suffering, nor did it come from living a life of luxury. It came from finding the middle path, a way of living that was balanced, where you could still experience life, but without being attached to its pleasures or pains. Now, Siddhartha set out for Bodh Gaya, where he would sit under a famous tree, known today as the Bodhi tree, and meditate until he found the answers he was looking for. This was the most important moment of his life. He found a comfortable place under the Bodhi tree, sat down, and made a vow. He promised that he would not rise up until he had found the truth. He was determined, and this was his final decision. He would sit there and meditate until the answers came. For 7 days, Siddhartha sat under the Bodhi tree, focusing his mind and searching deeply into his own heart. But the journey was not easy. During his meditation, he was attacked by Mara, the demon of temptation, who wanted to distract him from his mission. Mara sent powerful forms, rain, and mist, and
Hello, hello. Hi, all.